Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Career Advice Series webinar, Master the Art of Success. I am Emily Roshek, Associate Director of the newly enhanced ABA Legal Career Central, a career center that offers both career development resources and a job board for law students, lawyers, and other legal professionals across all disciplines and career stages. It is my pleasure to introduce our moderator today, Kanarek, a member of the ABA Legal Career Central Board. Kanarek has a JD from the University of Michigan Law School and a master's degree in social work from New York University. Her experience includes law practice as an associate in a large law firm in New York, teaching legal writing at 2 law schools, directing career services at a law school in New York, and providing coaching and consulting services to lawyers, major law firms, and law schools for over 30 years. For several years during the 1980s, Carol served as chairwoman of the Career Issues Committee of the Young Lawyers Division of the American Bar Association and continues to be active as a speaker at national, state, and local bar associations. Carol is a principal at Kanarek and Brady, LLC. Thank you very much for being here, Carol. I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Emily. I would like to introduce Kathleen, who will be your speaker today. Kathleen Brady is a certified career life management coach, author, and educator with 25-plus years experience helping students and professionals identify and integrate their personal and professional goals. Kathleen inspires clients to embrace their dreams and develop a comprehensive strategy to achieve career success and live happy, joyful lives. She is a principal at Kanarek and Brady, LLC, i.e. my good friend and business partner, and is an adjunct instructor and executive director of career services at Georgian University. Her latest book, Get a Job, 10 Steps to Career Success, and her weekly blog, The Art of Success, provide tactical strategies as well as inspiration. If you would like to have more information about either or both of us, please visit our website at kanarekandbrady.com. Before I turn the program over to Kathleen, I would like to assure you you are not alone if you do not have a clearly defined career path. High schools, colleges, and universities in the United States usually do little or nothing to facilitate career-related decision-making by their students. Indeed, that is one of the reasons why many very intelligent and accomplished students make the decision to attend law school in the first place. But as someone, allegedly Yogi Berra, famously said, if you don't know where you're going to, you'll probably end up somewhere else. Kathleen's mission today is to provide you with an overview of the mindset and strategies that will enable you to use your impressive skills to find a career path or continue in a career path that will be a happy and successful one for you. Kathleen?
Thank you, Carol. I'm so excited to be here to talk about one of my favorite things, success. And so people often have this notion of, I want to be successful, but they've not really taken the time to think about, what does it mean to be successful? And so we want to spend a little bit of time reflecting on that idea and give you some tools and strategies to make sure that you are identifying your dream and then putting an action plan in place. So I'm happy to be leading you on this little self-discovery journey for the next hour or so. So the first thing we need to identify for you or help you think about is, what does success look like? Now, the odds are everybody on this call is going to have a slightly different definition of what it looks like. But there have been studies done, and there's an organization called the Success Project that actually surveyed people who self-identified as feeling successful. They thought they were successful. And they asked them why. Why did they think they were successful? And 4 main themes came out of this. So to be successful, these folks felt like they were content about their life. Content is that sort of sense of inner peace that, you know, even when things aren't going exactly the way you want, you're just, it's okay. Everything is okay. So that's one component. The next component is about achieving measurable accomplishments. Now, that can be anything. And that's, you know, again, the blessing and the curse. An achievable accomplishment can mean a certain amount of money in the bank. It can mean having a particular job title. It could mean I've raised 3 kids and none of them are in jail or on drugs, right? So it's, but something that's tangible that you can point to and say, I have accomplished this. The third component is believing that you've had a positive impact on others, that it is you've made a difference, a little bit of it's a wonderful life, that kind of thing, that your existence matters and is important to other people. And then the last component is that leaving a legacy. Now, I know we've got a lot of people in different parts of their career journey. We've got a lot of law students. We've got some people at the very beginning of their career. And we also have people sort of towards the end of their career who are thinking about retiring and what's next for them. And so this notion of success may not only mean something different to each one of you, but over the course of your life, it may mean something different for you at the beginning of your career than it's going to mean at the middle, than it's going to mean towards the end. And so there's no right or wrong, there's no judgment. It really is about thinking about what does that look like for you. And it's very interesting because one of the biggest challenges, and we'll spend a lot of time talking about this today, is that there are internal and external definitions of success. And that tends to create the big conflict for us. When you are perfectly aligned, when the world tells you money, power, status is the thing that makes you successful, and when you buy into that, you say, yeah, that's exactly what I want, then everything's good. But it's when you're saying, but wait a minute, I want something a little bit different. But now is the world going to see me as successful? So if the world doesn't see me as successful, am I really successful? And that's where the struggle comes in. But it's interesting because it was the Insider Business did a survey, and the survey said that 90% of Americans hold the belief that success equals happiness, not money, power, status. But of course it begs the question then, what is happiness? And again, that answer is going to be different for everybody on the call. But they felt like happiness, not money, power, status. But for some of us, money, power, status, or some combination of those things is a thing that's going to bring us happiness. So we can't say that those things aren't right either. But it's really about understanding the world in which we live in, and again, finding that quiet space to hear our own voice. And it's very interesting because I work with people. I specialize in working with attorneys, but I work with people across lots of different disciplines and industries. And I think in the law firm or the legal environment, we are so money, power, status focused, right? You've got to get into the right law school. When you're in the right law school, then we kind of, there's gradations. You've got to be on the right journal. It can't just be on a journal. It's got to be the right journal, which one is the most prestigious journal. And then you've got to get the summer associate position, right? And it's got to be at the right firm. And then once you get the job at the firm, it's got to be in the right department because there's a status there. And even then, once you're in the department, you've got to be assigned to the right cases, the right deals. You've got to work with the right partners. And if you don't do those things, if you don't meet those external definitions, then that's where we feel that disconnect, and that's the challenge. So what you want to do, and this will sound so much easier than it actually is, but you want to ask yourself 3 questions. What do you want? Why do you want it? And what can stop you? 3 simple questions with very complicated answers that really require a bit of reflection. Let me just share with you just a really quick, very simplistic example of this. So you might say, what do you want? Well, I want a job that has a predictable schedule, that's close to home, and does interesting work. So the next question I would ask is, why do you want that? And some of you might be shrugging your shoulders saying, well, of course it's obvious why I would want that. It's not necessarily obvious, but so why do you want it? Well, because I have kids at home, and I've spent all this time in law school. I want to make sure that I've got I'm doing interesting work, and I'm not just doing doc review or due diligence work. I'm doing something somewhat sophisticated, but it's important to me to be home with my kids. That's why I want that predictable schedule. And then what can stop you? What are the obstacles that are going to be in your way? And I'm going to come back to the obstacles. But I want to focus for the moment on the what and the why. Because the why, my friends, is your definition of success. So for that person who has said, I want this predictable schedule because I want to be home with my family, the vision for success for that particular person has to do with balance in their life. Right? So that's the thing that's important. But what you want to think about, so again, so your why is always your definition of success. But the challenge for most of us in that why being the definition, is that there's always a sacrifice, if you will, or there's always a trade-off. Trade-off is probably better than sacrifice. There's always a trade-off. There's always a choice to be made. So yes, you might be able to find that balance, but that may mean the work is a little bit less sophisticated than you want. Or maybe that means if you have that balance, you're going to be making less money than maybe the person you went to law school with. And that's where we start to struggle. Well, I'm just as smart as she is. How come I'm not making as much money as she is? Well, but what's your definition? Maybe for her, the definition was to make the most amount of money. So she's successful in her own right, but you've achieved the life and you're living the life the way you want it. So that's your definition of success. So that's where we're always going to be struggling. The challenge is what conventional wisdom tells us, right? Where we are a society that is very much follow the herd. We all have to be the same. And again, it's, right school, right firm, right department, right kind of salaries, corner office. There are all these external rules that tell us we have to be the same as everybody else. And we've got to want the same thing as everybody else. And we march in the same direction. And for me, as I working with all of these folks, that are in transition and trying to find why is this not as, by everybody else's external definitions of success, I am, but I'm not happy. And I don't have that sense of inner peace. And it's usually because you've kind of got sucked into, got to go in the same direction as everybody else, got to be good at the same things as everybody else is, instead of focusing on your unique skills and talents and your own wants and dreams. So research shows, and again, this was done by the Gallup research, that when you build on your unique strengths and talents, your wants and needs, and you don't pay so much attention to the external, but you really are paying more attention to the internal, you are 6 times more likely to be engaged in your job. You are 3 times more likely to have an experience, a better quality of life, because you're able to achieve your goals, you feel confident and assured, more energetic, well-rested, happy, less worried, stressed, angry, all of those things. But when we are trying to be something that we're not so that we get along with the herd, we're like this poor little guy over here in the picture, just trying to push things, push that rock up the hill. And we might be strong enough to do it and successful enough to do it, but at what cost? So as touchy-feely as this all sounds, and hang with me because I promise I'm going to get more tangible for you, but as touchy-feely as I know it sounds is, you have to begin this whole notion of success and mapping out your path and your strategy by being your authentic self and being self-aware. And it is about being yourself because everybody else is taken, right? So you've got to really know who you are and own it. And so I often I call it my success strategy. I tell people, own your uniqueness. Don't try and be like the herd. You want to be able to identify, and you've got to be able to identify and articulate what are your abilities, your skills, your special knowledges. And you can't just, yes.
Oh,
yes.
Before you go on,
yes.
I would just like to note, which is completely consistent with everything that you're saying, that lawyers as a genre and law students in particular tend not to talk to each other about these things. So there is such an assumption in the legal profession that everybody is doing so much better than I'm doing or wants something that's completely different than I want. And as someone who was one of the very first people, probably the first person to leave a large law firm to go direct career services at a law school, where everybody thought I was out of my mind, I found that I needed to find my own herd. And part of this is finding other people that share your values and interests, and Kathleen will go on to talk about that.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think part of the challenge is we look at other people and think, oh, they've all got it figured out, and they're all happy and they're doing exactly what they want to do, and I need to be like them. And Carol and I can tell you, doing this, a combination of 50 years, that's not true. Everybody struggles with these things, and to different degrees. But absolutely find your herd. You've got to find your people, the people that you feel most aligned with. And so the first thing, in order to find those people, you have to know yourself. And again, what are your abilities, skills, and talents? And you can come at those, and sometimes those are easy to ask, but people sort of know, but have a hard time articulating that. And so just a couple of little ideas to help you figure it out and be able to kind of pull it out of, from deep down and within to be able to express it, is ask yourself, or sort of start paying attention to, what do you yearn to do? And I don't mean just like to do, but what when you don't get to do it, do you feel like something's missing in your life? And is that sometimes give you a sense of, I'm really good at this. This is something that makes me unique. And for myself, I always say writing is that thing. When I'm too busy and I haven't had a chance to write, I just, like, something inside just feels out of sorts. And so what's that thing that you don't get to do that you feel out of sorts with a little bit? And so that, that's something that makes you unique. Pay attention to that. The other thing is, what do you learn rapidly? There are some people who, can look at, the tax code and they just get it really quickly. Well, that means that's an innate ability that you have. That's just something you are good at. That's a gift. And not everybody's good at that. Maybe you are, a great legal strategist that you can sort of see the answers very quickly. Pay attention as you're learning things, as things come to you very naturally. That means that's probably something that's a natural ability. The last thing is, of course, if it gives you satisfaction. At the end of the day, I wrote that brief. I feel really good about that. That makes me feel good. I solved that case. I helped that person. I saved that company, whatever. But the things that just make you feel fulfilled. So pay attention to those things. Don't poo-pah them. Those things are important. If you're really struggling with that, there are a number of self-assessment tools out there that you might want to think about. Two that I always recommend to people is the Strength Finder, which is one that you can do on your own. It just, you do a sort of self-reflect kind of questionnaire, and it gives you your top 5 abilities, or your top 5 strengths. And it's great, because what you'll find is the odds of you and the person sitting next to you, or even the people at your firm, the odds of somebody having the exact same 5 strengths as you in the exact same order is 34 million to 1. So again, that's where we are trying to build on our uniqueness. So the second self-assessment tool is the Highlands Ability Battery, and that's a little bit more intense of an assessment tool. And certainly after the webinar, my email address is on the last slide, so feel free to, if you have questions about those things, I'm happy to spend a little time and send you some information about both of them. There are others out there, but those are the 2 that I usually work with. So own your uniqueness. The second thing is, and this is part of, as Carol was just saying, kind of following your own herd, is you have to honor your values. And most people we don't spend any time talking about this. It's all about skills and what are your, David Brooks, a columnist from the New York Times, wrote a great piece about our resume values and the things that we put on our resume, all the accomplishments and the top organizations and titles and all those things that are really great. But we don't pay attention to the eulogy values, the how do we do those things. And there's the sort of the resume values are the what, the eulogy values are the how. And it gives us a sense of where we fit in the world and how do we want to show up. And that's incredibly important in terms of our own view of success. Am I honoring my own values? Now, I've spent most of my time so far talking about you and how important it is for you to think about you. But you've also now have to start switching and be monitoring market trends, because you've got to understand the world of work and where you fit. and where you want to fit, I should say, because we could fit anywhere, but where do you want to fit? Because you have to understand what they value, what's important to them, both in terms of sort of their resume or tactical values and their eulogy values, what they want their brand to be about, and where are those things aligned. And so you have to know about you. You've got to do a little bit of investigating about the organization and make sure that those things come together. Now, I said I was going to talk before what do you want, why do you want it, what can get in your way. There are a bunch of obstacles that can get in your way, absolutely, without a doubt. And so the ones that Carol and I talk about all the time, or we see with people, the first one is the magical thinking. And magical thinking is, I always talk about this one in particular person. I want to work in a really small little neighborhood firm that does really sophisticated work and has really big, Fortune 50 clients. And I want to be able to go home at 5 o'clock and not work on the weekends. Well, that organization does not exist in the real world. So you can't just wish it and have it be so. You also can't say, be thinking of, well, I have, my undergraduates, I always laugh, I have one student in particular I'm thinking of, insists she's going to be a doctor and wants to go to medical school, and she's failing biology. And so when I ask her, well, why are you failing biology? It's not that she can't do the work, she's not smart enough. She says, oh, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, I don't really want to go to class at 8 o'clock in the morning, so I'm behind. Well, that's magical thinking, because you're not getting into medical school if you're not going to pass biology. So you want to think about people often see the success, but they're not paying attention to what do you have to do to get it, and are you prepared to do those things? So if you don't, if you're not prepared to do those things, then it just amounts to magical thinking. So we've got to put some legs on things. Then there are the external. Yes.
We have just been asked if we could post the links for the strengths tools. I think on our website, those things are there, right?
Strength Finders probably is not, but the Highlands Ability Battery certainly is.
Okay. I
can tell them right now.
Okay. If you can say what those are.
Yeah, you should just Google Strength Finders, and it's all one word, and that'll take you right to their website. And you could type it. The link for Highlands is Highlands, HIGHLANDSCO.com, highlandsco.com. And Carol, you might want to type that in the question box so that they see that.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to type it into our chat box.
Yeah, why don't you type it in there? Thank you. Okay.
That would be the link. So I just sent you the link.
Okay. The other thing while she's typing that in that I would like to mention that is apropos of the monitoring market trends is I work exclusively with lawyers, and because I'm a lawyer who made a major change myself, I have many lawyers coming to me who want to make major changes. And one of the things you need to understand is if you want to be a duck, you have to learn how to quack. So you need to functionalize your credentials to fit into what a job listing for something else may be. And lawyers indeed have skills that most other people don't. They tend to be more intelligent, more driven than other people to begin with, but they're not going to be able to read between the lines. So you need a different kind of resume if you're looking for something that is a little bit out of the box. And the other thing I would mention is if you happen to be a very good writer and you enjoy writing, as Kathleen and I both do, there is a great deficit of good writers right now.
Great.
Okay, Kathleen.
Okay, so yeah, so with the again with the magical thinking, it's really about and to with Carol's point too, is you've got to rebrand yourself a little bit. You can't just say, well, I'm a lawyer and now I could do X, because you've got to explain your background in a way that makes sense to them, that they understand. So you know what you do on a day-to-day basis, but how do you translate that? So magical thinking is one piece. The next piece is the external realities. And I am here to tell you that this is hard. You know, when you're trying to make a change or find a job or advance in your career, it's hard. There are going to be things and people that get in your way. There absolutely are. But the question is, and this will be different for everybody, is when we're looking at those external realities, we want to know what they are, but we want to figure out a way around them. And it's all about your mindset. And I know when I say that to people, they don't quite believe me. But people who are successful, and if you look at the people who are successful in their lives and you ask them, well, how'd you get there? They're going to tell you things like, well, it was just kind of luck, or it has to do with a mental attitude and a challenge that they've taken. When it is always somebody else's fault. When you hear yourself saying things like, the firm didn't give me the right opportunities, they didn't mentor me, they didn't, it's always they. You've got to sort of stop and ask yourself, okay, well, that may be true. Maybe they don't have a great mentor program. Maybe they didn't give you the right kind of assignments. So that's an obstacle. What might you do differently to get what you need from that? And so it's about trying to switch that. So it really is about changing the mindset. Oops, hold on a sec. There we go. You want to change your thinking from I can't because to how can I? And I always use this very specific example. I believe absolutely everything in life is possible if you're willing to work for it. So for example, at 55 years old, if I wanted to be a prima ballerina, I believe I could do it. But I would think, how will I do that? Well, I'd probably have to quit my day job. I'd have to be dancing 10 hours a day. I'd have to stop eating Oreos. Am I prepared to do those things? No. So then I might think, well, it's not that I can't do that. When I realize I don't want to do all the things that are necessary to achieve that, I go back to the why. Well, why do I want to be a ballerina, right? Because that's my definition of success. Well, maybe I like to be around dancers. Well, what's another way that I could be around dancers? Well, I'm a lawyer, so maybe I could go in and be a law firm for a lawyer for the Joffrey Ballet, or maybe I could be. So you get closer to the ballpark of where you want to be. But if I just said I can't be a prima ballerina because I'm old, I'm fat, I haven't danced in 10 years, then you feel stuck. But when you make that switch to I can't because to I choose not to do that, but I'm going to do this instead, that gives you a whole different energy around achieving the things that you want to achieve. And again, when you're trying to advance and you see an obstacle in your way, rather than I can't get ahead because these things are in my way, you say these things are in my way. What can I do about that? How can I navigate this? And again, it's a simple question. The answers are hard, and you can't always do them by yourself, and that's why Carol and I spend so much time working with people and coaching them and helping them. Let's strategize, because it's a whole strategy around that. And you try different things and see what might work. It's always interesting because it kind of when you think about this, the event itself, the thing that happens, has no emotional content to it. It's the thought or the label that we put on it. And then that thought or label creates a feeling within us, which then kind of leads to whatever the action might be. So let's, for example, because I know there's so many junior folks on there on the call, maybe looking for their first job. The event is there's an interview. You've got an interview coming up, and your thought is, well, they'll never hire me because I didn't go to the right school, or I don't have the right grades, or whatever. They're probably not going to hire me anyway. So the feeling is one of sort of defeat already before you even start. So maybe your action is, I'm not going to bother applying, or I don't know, I'm not going to be all that prepared. Who cares? Because it's not really going to happen. But what if that same interview you were able to change that thought? Instead of they're never going to hire me because, if you say, I've got an uphill battle here because I don't typically hire somebody from my school with my grades or whatever. But this is a great opportunity for me to show them what I can do. And so now the feeling is a little bit more hopeful, maybe a little anxious, but a little more hopeful. And now your action is, I have to be doubly prepared because, I got to convince them. So you can change your action and hopefully then ultimately change that result. But it is that thought or that label that we immediately put on things that causes the feeling that creates the action or disaction or inaction, inaction instead. And there are a couple of things that keep us stuck. I always call them sort of the nails that keep us where we are. And that first nail is that negative talk, that inner critic that tells you you're going to fail, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not pretty enough, you're too young, you're too old, don't even bother, right? That inner critic, oddly enough, is really trying to to protect us from embarrassing ourselves. And so it holds us back. It kind of it creates this fear in us that just keeps us stuck. The second one is an assumption that we make, that expectation that because it's happened before, it's going to happen again. And assumptions that we hold tend to be based on our personal experiences, right? I've interviewed for 3 jobs, I haven't gotten 3 jobs, therefore I'm not going to get the next job. So we just kind of make that assumption, and that's where that label comes from. Third one is an interpretation. An interpretation is a judgment that you create. Might be wrong, might be right, who knows? But it's only one point of view about that particular situation. And then, of course, the last thing, and I always think this is one of the most challenging ones, particularly for the legal profession, is the limited beliefs. That's something that we accept about life, about ourselves, or the world that limits us in some way. And this is something that we have learned from some external authority that's there. So what we want to do is, as we think about these nails, we want to, again, when we're feeling stuck or not quite sure how to proceed, we want to kind of look at the situation and see which of these things or which combination of these things might be at play and figure out a strategy to temper each one of them. So for the negative talk, I always said this is one of the hardest ones, and this one is, people always say it's a little goofy, but it kind of works. So give it an identity so that you could see it in an objective term in order to lessen its power. So the next time it shows up, you kind of know what you will do. And one of my clients used to use a koosh ball. That was his negative talk. That was his sort of inner voice telling him he wasn't good enough, right? And so when he was feeling a little insecure about whatever was going on, he would play with the koosh ball a little bit in his hand, right? And then when he was ready to make a move, he would literally take the koosh ball, which he named Fred, I'm not sure why, and he would take Fred and toss Fred across the room. And it was very symbolic for him because what it represented was Fred never leaves the room. You're always going to have, we all have, even the most successful people have a little bit of that negative chatter in our head. But we need a strategy when they show up, when it's trying to put fear in front of us to help us be fearless. And so when Fred was on the other side of the room, that was his cue that he was going to take action. And it was going to be able to do that, and that was something that helped release it. And again, I know that sounds a little goofy to people, but if that voice in your head is really loud, that's the first thing you want to deal with. The other 3 are a little bit easier to deal with because these are just kind of conversations you can either have with yourself or with a trusted colleague or with a coach, but assumptions that just because it happened before, you have to ask yourself, why must it happen again? Just because I interviewed these last 3 times, why must the 4th time also, what makes me think it's going to happen again? Why do I believe that? Where does that come from? And why do I believe that? Maybe it comes from negative self-talk. Maybe it comes from, I wasn't well prepared. Well, okay, so now you can do something about that. But what we're trying to do is just get you unstuck a little bit, shift that energy. My favorite thing, and I use this all the time in my own personal life, is the interpretation. When I am stuck, and I am believing that my point of view is right, I always ask myself, what's another way to look at this? I want to point out that it doesn't say, is there another way to look at this? Because if you pose it as a yes or no question, most of us are going to say, no, my way is right. But when you say, what's another way of looking at it, and you just in your head kind of brainstorm all the other possibilities, then you start to see, okay, I don't know, I still think my interpretation is right, but let me give that person the benefit of the doubt. Maybe there is another way to look at this, and that helps to shift your energy. The last one is that limiting beliefs. What effect does this have on my life? What proof exists? You know, they always say seeing is believing. I come from a world where believing is seeing. So if, for example, the limiting belief is women cannot become CEOs at major Fortune 500 companies, right? We are going to look at all the major companies that do not have women and say, see, they don't exist. It's impossible. Or we could look at the 20 or so that there are, maybe not enough, but now we at least see it's possible. So we see proof that it's possible. So it's all, you see what you look for. I want to give a really specific example of how this whole notion of events, thoughts, feelings, actions all kind of came into play, a very specific example that actually happened. So there was, I was working at a law firm, and there was an assignment that came in that was going to be, the partner viewed it as just a horrible assignment. It really involved someone that was going to have to leave like in 8 hours, go off to Asia, fly all night, you know, run meetings all day, fly back, and it was just kind of a grueling thing. And so he has two superstars that he wants to, you know, he's got to send one of these two superstars. So one is a male, single, the other is a woman, just had a baby not long ago. So the partner, without having any conversation with anybody, makes the executive decision, I'm just going to send the guy because it'll just be easier to do that and be like, this is a horrible thing, but it will inconvenience the least amount of people by just sending him. So that is the assumption he makes, the interpretation that he makes. The male partner, or the male associate, who is now having to go on this assignment, is angry. He's thinking, geez, because I'm single, I always have to be the one that gets these crappy assignments, and I don't want to go, and I had plans this weekend, and so now he's really angry with the partner. So his action is, you know, he's a little snippy and maybe not the best for his career in terms of snapping back. And the woman, who absolutely thinks this is a fabulous opportunity to be in front of the client and wants to go, is angry. And she makes the assumption that the partner chose the guy because women can't get ahead here, and he doesn't think I'm capable. So all three of these people had very different interpretations of the same situation. And what could have happened for any one of them, if they were trying to be really successful, right, would have been to have that conversation and to ask the question, right? So the partner could have said to the two of them, both of you come in, I want, you know, this is an assignment, I'm making, because in his mind it was a bad deal, you know, a bad assignment, but the woman thought it was a great assignment. And so if they had just had that conversation, if he had just asked, which one of you would like to go? Or if the woman had said to him, why is it that you've not sent me? I'd like to do this. Or if the guy had said, gee, I had plans this weekend, can we send someone else? But we don't want to do that because we've got to be careful politically. Is this going to be a problem? How's this going to affect my career? There's external definitions of success. But there are ways to have these conversations, these difficult conversations, in a way that will advance your career without hurting your career. But you got to know how to have the conversations. And you can't wait until you get yourself all worked up into a head of steam. So my whole point
Kathleen?
is when the event happens, yes. What?
Well,
yes.
Finish your sentence, but then I'd like to just talk for a second about what you just said in an interview context.
Sure, and the event's going to happen. You're going to have the thought and feeling. Don't try and squash that. Just have it, experience it. But you want to pause before you take the action, because that's where the strategy is going to come in terms of how am I going to talk to that partner, or how am I going to position myself in an interview, or before you take an action. We really want you to have that mindfulness to be able to respond to a situation and not react. And so that's, but go ahead, Carol.
Yes. One of the things that, first of all, if you are in front of somebody who actually is an interviewer or in a position potentially to provide a job to somebody, and you can see that it's pretty clear that you're not the person for that particular job, what I've always done, what I did back when I was in law school, which was a terrible time when, it was Jerry Ford to New York dead time, so it was really a very difficult time to find a job. I would always turn it around, and I found that being a Midwesterner in New York, you get people to talk about themselves, and it's amazing what it does, to say, what would the ideal sort of person be able to do for you? What are the kinds of things that keep you up at night? You know you're not going to get this particular job, but you're in a situation where you can make a friend. You can demonstrate to somebody that you've got skills that could be used in different ways. I had no idea what I would be doing, that I would be doing what I was doing, 15 years after I graduated from law school. But some of those friends that I made from places that wouldn't have hired me when I was in law school ended up being people that I now work for. Or, you get people to talk about themselves. It gives you insight into what's important to them, and also what skills you might have that are not necessarily on your resume. You are not your resume. You are much, much, much more than that. And I think law school makes you, it tends to make people feel smaller in many ways. Like all of the other things that they are or were are irrelevant. Right. And, which is, again, what Kathleen's been saying too. But use those meetings as an opportunity to make a friend. Get people to talk about themselves, and that's helpful to you and helps you in innumerable ways going forward.
Right. And it's interesting because it is about sort of finding your own uniqueness, but also having the curiosity to find out about the uniqueness of others as well. So when you are other focused and when something irritates you or you don't understand someone's behavior, help me understand why, or I'm curious, what is it you're looking for in the ideal candidate? I can't tell you how many times a day I say, I'm curious, help me that phrase, really, because it opens it up. It doesn't make people defensive. They will share information with you, perhaps offer you a new insight, a new way that you might be able to behave. But as you're thinking about what kind of strategy you want to use going forward, you already know what you know, you don't know what they know. So it's about asking that kind of question. But it really, again, owning your uniqueness and who are you and who do you want to be. And so I often say, at each stage of your career, you want to consider, what do you want people to think about you? Think about that. What do I want people to be saying about me behind my back? And jot it down. Think of 3 or 4 adjectives. What is that? And then you want to make sure that you will behave in a way that is consistent with what you have just defined as your brand. And again, this may evolve over time. You have to be your authentic self, but you want to think about these things. And I often use myself as an example. One of the things, the values that I hold really dear is being kind. I want people behind my back to say, she's kind. Well, I will tell you, some days it's really hard to be kind, because I got a little bit of a temper and a little bit impatient. And there are days when I just want to smack people in the back of the head because they're annoying me, right? Well, that gives me an opportunity, that anchor of, but I want my brand, I want to be thought of as kind. And that's not a good behavior. And that's not really who I want to be. I'm not going to let somebody else kind of provoke me to behave a different way than what I want to be. So for me to be able to identify that and then hold that as being true to myself, that makes it easier. But it's got to be conscious. If it's not conscious, that's when we just react to things without responding. And again, the good news is you get to control that story. How do I want people to think about me? The bad news is you got to control the story. So I can't think, I want everybody to think I'm kind and then go around just treating people badly. Just can't do it, right? So the behavior has to be aligned with your vision for yourself. So here's a challenge I throw to people, and you don't need to do this. Over the weekend, I want you to think about this. Think about listing the three, maybe 3 to 5 characteristics that describe you when you are at your best. when you are firing on all cylinders. And then write the 3 characteristics that describe you when you are at your worst, when you are feeling stressed and fatigued and all of that. You just know you're not being the best version of yourself. And so think about that. And then, after you've got that list, ask 3 to 5 colleagues the same questions. Be a little smart and be political about who you ask this question. Don't go marching into the managing partner's office and asking this question. Think about trusted colleagues and people that know you reasonably well, but maybe aren't your best friends, but people who are going to be honest with you and share that kind of information. It is amazing to me the things that you'll find out about yourself. First of all, you'll get a sense of how other people view you, and again, then you can decide, well, that's not what I want to think about me, and maybe you shift a little bit on how you're going to behave. Or you might also find that some of the things that you are listing as your worst, that you think are your weaknesses, those are the very things that your colleagues admire about you. And again, I go back to, you don't have to be like everybody else. And the thing that you're thinking makes you the odd duck in the world is the one thing that people value about you. And so that will give you then that confidence that you need to say, yeah, my internal definition of success is okay and it's working. So this is a big challenge. This is hard to do because we're vulnerable, and who wants to be vulnerable, right? But I'm telling you, this is probably the most worthwhile thing that you can do to help yourself grow. I also suggest when you do this, when you're asking your colleagues to do this for you, maybe ask them in an email so they've got some time to think about it. It'd be really hard, to put somebody right on the spot and ask them to do it right this minute. I always like people to be a little bit reflective. So let's bring all this together, right? So now we got your sense of your uniqueness and what makes you special, but understanding the world of work and how it is that the world is operating and where those things are aligned. Who do you want to be, and what do you want people to be saying about you behind your back? I did want to just share my favorite story of Steve Jobs, right? So Steve Jobs, I mean, if you think about it, this man changed the world, changed the way we do business, changed the way we live our lives. Absolutely. But if you know much about him, if you read any of his bio, he wasn't a particularly nice guy. But what did he want people to say about him at his funeral? He wanted people to say he changed the world, and he did. So he wasn't particularly worried that he wasn't a nice guy. That wasn't a concern for him. And so in his mind, and in a lot of other people's mind, he was successful. Right? Now, we can judge him and say, well, no, because he wasn't a nice guy, treated people badly, whatever. But you want to take the judgment out of this. For him, he was successful. And some people say, I want to work with Steve Jobs. He's not a nice guy, but man, he's the smartest person. I want to be around that. That's a choice you make. Somebody else might say, I would never work for somebody like that because he's horrible. And I want to go to a place that's kind and all. And that's fine too. But you have to find your place in the world. So let's talk about these 5 top successes. And again, I don't care whether you are just starting out your career or you are in the middle or winding down your career in terms of these success strategies. You want to be thinking about these things all the time, and they're a good reminder. And there's nothing kind of reveal. I mean, these are things hopefully you've all heard before, but we want to make sure that you constantly bring this to your consciousness. It is first, do quality work. And you got to bring your A game every day when you go to a law firm, right? Or in the legal profession. So just doing just what you need to skate by doesn't cut it. So excellence is sort of the name of the game here. And so you have to always be offering your clients quality work. And you do that no matter what stage you're at in your career by building your knowledge and your experience, seeking opportunities to learn. And I say this particularly for some of the folks who are more seasoned here. You got to keep up, right? The law is constantly changing. The delivery is changing. What client demands, so you've always got to be thinking about when you get to a point in your career where you think, I know everything there is to know, you're done. You've got to always be thinking, what's next? What else do I need? Again, it's about taking initiative, thinking ahead, being responsible, reliable to your teammates, to your clients, to your bosses, all of that. And you do all of that by being a problem solver. You want to be the person who comes with the solutions, not just the person who's running around like your hair is on fire, sort of pointing out everything that's wrong. Yeah, everything's wrong. Well, what's the solution to that? So you want to, even if you're not the decision maker, you want to be able to say, okay, here's the issue. Here are a couple of different ways that we might want to resolve this. What would you like to do? Right? So it depends where you are in your career, but it's always about solving the problem. And when you do these things, that inspires confidence. And that's, you want to have that reputation of you're the go-to person. You're the person who, I always can count on to get the job done, to have a good idea, whatever it might be. So that's the first.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Can I just add something quickly here?
Absolutely.
Many of my clients these days are more senior lawyers. And what I found is, having been an associate at a big firm at a time when people weren't so siloed, is that people who have actually been doing this for 30, 40, 50 years and in that environment have skills that a lot of more junior lawyers don't have. And if you can find a place, and there are so many newer firms, since about 80% of the work that was done by large firms when I was a junior lawyer is being done by smaller or mid-sized firms where, people have those kinds of credentials, but they're just not making partner. I found that a lot of very senior lawyers can package themselves in ways that make them marketable as someone who can be what used to be the senior partner in the bigger firms.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay.
It's all about paying attention to what's going on and what are the established norms. And so if you're going from sort of a partner at a big firm, and now you're looking to have, well, how can I fit into a mid-size or smaller firm? What roles are there to play? It's not going to look exactly like it's looked where you were. So you've got to figure out, kind of crack the code. What are the norms here in terms of technology and dress and grooming and language, and you've got to adapt to that. You're about to join a world that's already functioning, so that you've got to adapt to them. They're not necessarily going to adapt to you. Doesn't mean you can't ultimately be a change agent, so I'm not talking about that. So there may be opportunities, but you can't just come in and expect the world to be different. And you also don't ever want to be the person who says, well, at my last firm, this is how we did it. My last firm, you don't want to be that guy for that long, because that gets tiresome to people. It's like, if it was so great over there, you should have stayed there, right? And it's very interesting to me because different places are very different. I moved from working at a big law firm to going back to higher ed, and I was so impatient because people don't respond to email. In a law firm, you don't respond to an email within 24 hours, you're toast. I would get emails 3 weeks later. It's just a different norm, and so you've got to look at those things. You also want to pay attention to the leadership. Who are the people that are identified as the superstars, right? And because that will give you some clues about, that's how to be successful in this organization. And if I want to be successful here, those are some of the qualities I want to, have to kind of own and incorporate into myself. And if that's not what you want to be, if you don't want to be like that leadership, then you got to think about, is this the place I want to be? And again, make that executive decision for yourself. You also, and these two things are mostly for my more junior people on the call, you got to know the policies and procedures of things. You don't have to have everything committed to memory, but you can only get away with, I don't know, for so long. At some point, people are going to say, it's written, we gave it to you during orientation, we showed you where to find this information. You got to follow the rules. So again, you want to make sure that you know what they are. And you also want to observe the difference between what is the written policy and procedure and what is acceptable. And so that, again, it's a lot of this is, once you know yourself, it's sort of looking at the world and what to be successful here, what do I need to do to be here? What are their rules? What are their processes? And you've got to be able to adapt to that. I don't care what level you're at, manage your time effectively. We could do an entire webinar on time management. The big thing you want to remember is, plan and execute. So if you're a junior person with lots on your plate, you want to set your action plan, break it into those small manageable steps, and be able to think about the realistic timelines and deadlines and things. For those of you who are senior and that you've got to delegate to people, you have to do this too. Otherwise, you're going to be the choke point. So, for a junior person, this may be something, you could do in the shower in the morning while you're washing your hair, thinking about, okay, these are things I need to do. Here's how I'm going to get it done. When you're talking about a complex case or deal, you might need to map it out. You might have to have it on pen and paper, little flow charts, whatever it might be, but you've got to do that and then be able to funnel it out to people. But that planning stage that people don't do a lot of times because they're very reactive, this can save you an enormous amount of time. And then, of course, you also have to prioritize and concentrate. What's the big ticket item that has to get done? What's going to take the longest? What can I get started in terms of, let me delegate this to other people while I do these other things? And in the planning and execution, you've got to do that priority. And I do always love to talk about the difference between urgent and important, because at a law firm, everything is important, right? But, people say things with such a sense of urgency, like it's got to be done tomorrow, without saying that, but that their tone is, I needed it yesterday. When you say, when do you need this by? They say, oh, next week will be fine. So you want to always ask that. And of course, ask for guidance when you need to. Work collaboratively. It's all about communication. If there were one answer to what is the key to success, it is the ability to communicate with other people and work collaboratively. And so you've got to learn how to do those things. You also want to build strong networks. And again, whether you are a junior person or a senior person, think about that. Think about the people that whether you're your classmates, your family, be likable, be somebody that people want to help. Think about who mentors are. Create your own board of advisors. You want to be visible, not just within your organization by being involved in those activities, but outside. You want to build relationships. We live in a very relational world, and so you've got to like yourself, and other people have to like you in order to be able to work collaboratively and to experience that sense of inner peace that we're all sort of looking for. I sort of close with the success is a quote by Maya Angelou, that success is liking yourself, liking what you do, and most importantly, liking how you do it. That is success, my friends. And so it's going to be different for each and every one of you, but it really is about building that mindfulness to define it for yourself and then go out and find it. See the obstacles, figure out your way around them, and ask for help along the way, because there are people who can help you around those obstacles. So I don't know if any questions came in. I know we're like right on 2 o'clock. I want to be mindful of people's time, but I wanted to, I hope you found this helpful.
We need to turn it back to Emily.
Emily, okay.
All right, well, thank you so much, Carol, for moderating, and Kathleen for this very compelling discussion on defining success in our lives and careers. And I appreciate all the great tools and exercises you've given us to figure that out, and looking forward to doing that over the weekend as well. And thank you all for attending today's webinar. Attendees, please be sure to check out our website at abalcc.org for upcoming free career-related articles and webinars. Recordings are on the website, and right now on your screen are some of our upcoming Career Advice Series webinars that occur on the second Friday of every month. And on the next slide are our upcoming Career Choice Series webinars. And please connect with us on social media. We have all the links in the handout and on your screen right now. And then if you also want to get to know the board of the Legal Career Central a little bit more, you can see more on our About page. Please complete our short survey before you leave. Thank you again for attending, and have a great day.